If you ever wondered what we as individuals can do to bridge divides between people in society, this might be a good moment to start training your curiosity muscle. Not the kind of training that happens in a gym, though, but in interactions with others, especially with those who see the world very differently than you do. Because curiosity allows us to zoom out of our bubble and to break down the walls we build around it, brick by brick. And luckily, all of us can train our curiosity muscle, and I will share a way to do so. But first, let's talk about curiosity. Who of you ever really thought about what curiosity means, what the definition is? In all honesty, I didn't. I just assumed I was curious, because I like to learn. That is, until I heard psychotherapist Esther Perel explain curiosity as an interest in finding out, but without the emotional attachment to what the outcome is. So yes, it's about learning, but it's more than that. It's also about discovering. It's about understanding someone else's view without judging them against your own. Now, think of a time you had a conversation with someone you really disagreed with. Think back to that conversation. What was it like? Were you actually able to remain curious? Or were you trying to be right? Were you actually discovering? Or were you defending your own views? When I realized that in these kind of tense conversations, I have a tendency to defend my own views rather than discovering someone else's, it made me wonder, do we still have the ability to be curious in today's world, where we seem to be judging the other person faster than they can speak? And that's ironic, because as a trained conflict analyst, I've seen firsthand how essential curiosity is. Let me bring you to Lebanon, a beautiful country, but also one scarred by a 15-year civil war, ongoing political tensions and regional escalations, and a power-sharing system that's very complicated with 18 different religious denominations. I was there in 2016 as a master's student of conflict studies, and I wanted to research how local civil society organizations across Lebanon try to bring groups of youth together from different religious, ethnic, and geographical backgrounds, with the aim to build peace after conflict, to reconcile after conflict. So there I was, and I remember one initiative I visited in the north of Lebanon vividly. It took place in the city of Tripoli by an NGO called March. And what March tried to do is bring youth from two historically divided neighborhoods in the city of Tripoli together. Those communities were only separated by one road. And they'd been suffering from violent conflict for years by that time. Imagine you've been taught certain things about the other neighborhood your entire life. Or you might have even lost someone because of that violence. And suddenly you're invited to join this initiative, to work together with your enemy, together create a theater play about your experiences growing up in that neighborhood. When I was in Lebanon, I visited that specific neighborhood, or actually those neighborhoods, and on the border, they erected a cafe after years later. And there I met Tarek, and he was one of the participants. He was 26 at the time, and he told me when I arrived on that first day of rehearsal, I was ready. I was ready to fight the other side. Some even came armed, the facilitators confirmed. And Tarek said, the first initial stages, mistrust really prevented us from mingling. But over time, as we started explaining what it was like to grow up there, we realized something. We suffered from the same unemployments, the same poverty, the same violence. And it was there and then that I realized that psychologist Gordon W. Allport's theory on intergroup contact theory was right. In order for groups to come together, to improve the relationships between the groups, to reduce prejudice, and to diminish the us versus them distinction, 4 facilitating conditions need to be in place. And March was a beautiful example of how that worked. First of all, the participants need to have equal status in that encounter, which was the case because both neighborhoods were ready to share their experiences. There needs to be a common goal for them to work towards. In this case, a theater play that they not only wrote together, but also performed together. They need to work on that for an extended period of time together. And lastly, there needs to be some sort of institutional support. And in this case, it was enough to guarantee the safety of the participants. So yeah, on an intergroup contact level, a lot happened, and a lot can happen to improve those relations. But one comment by Tarek made me wonder what happens on an individual level. Why is it that some youth are able to go beyond the mistrust, to really dive into each other's stories, to learn about each other, to rethink certain things, and perhaps even go from foes to friends? In the case of Tarek, during the interview, he pointed at another guy who was now his colleague in that cafe. And he said, "That's Youssef. I used to hate him the most. But now I love him the most." Remember Esther Perel's definition of curiosity as an interest in finding out, but without the emotional attachment to what the outcome is? That was what happened here. Tarek and Youssef were both sincerely curious about each other. When I left Lebanon, I realized that these insights were also relevant for non-post-conflict societies. For ours, for example. A recent study by the Central Bureau of Statistics in 2024 showed that we have surprisingly segregated social circles here in the Netherlands. And the higher the income, the more segregated we become. But a diverse society of ours needs a healthy social fabric to fall back on. We need a strong social cohesion to be able to live together. Because if that glue disappears, we tend to retract into isolated groups. We lose trust in each other, and we lose the ability to cooperate. The social glue is thinning, but we are not powerless in this. Curiosity is the tool that helps us to zoom out of our bubble and meet with people we do not agree with. So I decided to train my curiosity muscle. Bit of a disclaimer, it is not easy. And just like any kind of muscle training, it needs time and effort and perseverance, but it's definitely worthwhile. And over the course of all the different conversations I had with all the different people outside of my own bubble, I fell back on 4 different steps. And I will share them with you, but also will try to bring them alive with one example. Because the first step is pick a topic you're interested in. Could be anything from food culture to social justice issues, as long as you really want to learn something and perhaps also have your own assumptions challenged. I decided to start easy, politics. I actually wanted to meet my ideological opponents. Luckily, an acquaintance of mine, he invited me to join him to the conference of his political party, a party I fundamentally disagree with. That brings me to the second step in the process. Decide on your guiding principles for being curious. One important one of mine was, I was there to discover, not to defend. So I would only ask questions, and unless I heard something that was factually incorrect, I would not challenge. because I was really there to be a guest in someone else's world. The second guiding principle I had to learn the hard way. Do not expect curiosity in return. You can be the most curious person in the room, but that doesn't mean the other person can or is willing to do the same. So after deciding on your topic and the person you want to talk to and deciding on your guiding principles, time for the third step, the actual immersion. So I woke up on the day of the political party conference of that party, not a really big fan of, and I was ready to listen. Luckily, I had an excellent guide. He introduced me during that day to anyone I wanted to talk to as, this is Kelly, she's a critic of our party, and I can tell you that's a really good opener. And I had conversations with mayors, parliamentarians, people from different factions within the party. And let me tell you that I never have asked so many questions in a day, but it really allowed me also to challenge my own prejudices and assumptions and narratives about that party. And that brings me to the fourth step and the final step. Reflect on it afterwards. What did you learn during that conversation? What did you perhaps even rethink? And what were you surprised by? Because over the course of training my curiosity muscle, and it really has grown stronger, I realized the first important lesson is that it really pushed me out of my own bubble and also allowed me to confront my own prejudices and assumptions about others. It also gave me a sense of nuance in a world that thrives on black and white thinking, good versus bad, fair versus unfair. But it's actually in that gray space where the magic happens. And lastly, in a world like ours that is changing so fast, we need to remain adaptable. And curiosity is an essential ingredient for adaptiveness because you remain open to the possibility of change, the possibility of surprise, and also the possibility that you might be wrong. So here's my challenge for you. Find someone in the coming week in your surroundings whose worldview puzzles you, perhaps even frustrates you, and ask them one curious question. And then over time, keep continuing this practice. Because you know what the beautiful thing about training your curiosity muscle is? Behind every opinion that you find frustrating, there's usually a story that makes at least partially sense when you hear it. Thank you.